External validation. So for Rick, he was in a perplexing situation. He had been in his job for like 15 years and he was thinking he should leave now. He started when he was around 20. Now he's found himself at 35, wanting to leave his job, but what would his mom think? His mom was really proud of him when he got that job. So he went home and got on the phone with his mom and started talking about the job. But when he did so, he tried to talk about all the negative parts of the job because, well, he wanted his mom to support his decision because he had decided he's going to go ahead and try to leave this job. Does that make sense? So he's telling his mom about the job, but all the bad parts of the job. And then he was concerned about what his friends might think as well. So he contacted his buddies and they all went out for drinks and he started telling them, hey, here's the problems I'm having with this job. It's the boss, it's the coworkers. What do you guys think? Am I in the wrong for wanting to leave this job? And after Bob was done with that, he started to kind of talk to some of his coworkers, kind of low key to find out what they're feeling, to get a pulse of how they would feel if he left the job. And so he's asking them, what do you think? Because I'm thinking about leaving this job. I don't know. And some of his coworkers commiserated and they said, yeah, you know what? I'm tired of this place. You should leave this job. I want to leave this job too. And by the time Rick was done, he had talked to everyone except his boss about leaving the job. And when he finally went into his boss to leave the job, he felt like, okay, I got my friends behind me. I got my coworkers behind me. I got my parents behind me. He goes in to tell the boss his decision. But as he's talking to his boss starts kind of talking him out of his decision. And now he finds himself in a really tight bind because he wants to impress his boss, and his boss is making some really good points. But he should have talked to his boss first because now he's already talked to his friends and they're expecting him to quit. His coworkers are expecting him to quit. His parents want him to quit. They all hate the job now because he spent so much time selling the idea that the job is bad. What's the problem that Rick has in this situation? Do you notice something unhealthy that Rick is doing? The problem here is that Rick is seeking external validation for his decision. Rick is seeking external validation for his decision, and that is a problem. Seeking validation from others in itself may not seem bad because in itself it wouldn't be bad if it's handled in a way that's healthy. It's good to put frosting on top of a cake, but we wouldn't want to make a cake entirely made of frosting, right? We have to know how to get the spice of life and not just eat the spices and have no food underneath the spices. And so that's how it goes for someone who seeks external validation as a trauma survivor. When they do so to cope with their lack of trust in themselves, when they do so to compensate for their lack of confidence in their own decision-making abilities, when they're seeking external validation because they're over-dependent or codependent on others, when they're seeking external validation because they are chronic people pleasers, when they're seeking the external validation because really they abandon themselves and they don't know how to validate themselves in their own decisions, and they don't trust their own opinions and they think everyone else's opinion is better than theirs, that is unhealthy. And it will lead them to very perplexing situations in life. They really won't be equipped because life is a series of making decisions, isn't it? We have to make tens of thousands of decisions every day. But how can we make those decisions if we don't have the skills? And how can we build the skills if all we do is ask everyone else what they think? And then try to make our decisions based on that. Calling our mom, calling our dad, calling our siblings, talking to the coworkers, We're talking to everybody under the sun, but we're forgetting to talk to someone really, really important. And that's what we're going to learn about today is how to break this external validation loop so that we can actually learn healthy self-reliance. You see, if you don't know how to validate yourself, then aren't you just the prime subject for gaslighting? If you don't know how to validate yourself, aren't you just a sitting duck for a narcissist or a manipulator, for an abuser, a mental abuser to get in your head and to scramble everything around? Since you don't believe your own version of reality, they can just tell you their version of reality. And then what do? They tell it to you again and again and again. Or the narcissist will yell louder or talk louder. So they're dominating your thoughts. And they'll say, this is what happened. This is what happened. So you're going, hey, didn't you say that you were going to help me to pay the bill? And they gaslight you. They say, I didn't say that. You told me that you were going to help me with my car. I didn't say that. And they make up this story, and you're like, I seem to remember you saying that. I'm like, no, I didn't say that. There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your memory, something wrong with your thinking. They're gaslighting you, which is to make you believe that a false reality is the real reality, and what you remember is false, and therefore you are mentally ill, is the implication of it. That's true gaslighting, to make you believe that you are actually mentally ill, that you can't rely upon your own brain. And you're just a sitting duck if you don't know how to validate yourself. Meanwhile, a person who understands healthy self-validation is impervious to gaslighting, because they'll say, hey, didn't you say you were going to help me to pay this bill? And then the narcissist says, no, I didn't say that. You said you were going to do this. And someone who has healthy self-validation says, that's not how I remember it. Well, you're wrong. There's something wrong with your brain. Nevertheless, that's not how I remember it. Here's what I remember. They're impervious to the gaslighting because they have healthy self-validation. Would you like to have that level of groundedness, to be tethered to reality that strong, where nobody can move you around, pull you and stretch you from one direction to the next? We want you to be gaslight bulletproof. And so what we're going to do is teach you how to validate yourself so that nobody can switch things around and try to convince you that you can't rely upon your own brain. Okay. And so the first thing you need to recognize is that looking for external validation for your decisions is a trauma response. Looking to others to help you to make your decisions is a trauma response. Relying on others to make you feel valid in your opinion is a trauma response. It's over dependence on others, codependency. That's where you're reliant on other people for validation, reassurance. Codependency is the fear of standing on your own or being alone. You may be seeking approval, reassurance, validation from friends, romantic partners, because you're insecure in your own decision-making ability. If you engage in impulsive or risky behaviors, you could do it to be seeking the validation of others, or you could be manipulative like Rick was in the story. Did you notice how he was manipulating his mom? You see, Rick was telling his mom all the bad parts of his job so that he would get a specific reaction from his mom. He wanted his mom to come to a conclusion, and the conclusion was what he wanted, the decision he wanted to make. But instead of just making the decision and standing on his own, he's trying to get his mommy to validate his decision. That's not very adult-like or manly, is it? Likewise, for us, when we're trying to get someone else, we're manipulating them so that they'll come to the conclusion we want them to come to. Make no mistake, that is manipulation. It is a trauma response. You are afraid to stand on your own, to make your own decision, to face the consequences of the conclusion that you've come to. Some survivors may identify strongly with their status as a victim or in learned helplessness, so they continually seek validation by emphasizing their traumatic experiences and their associated hardships. But then that hinders their process in being able to heal properly. So it's important to recognize that these behaviors are maladaptive coping mechanisms. And addressing these unhealthy behaviors requires us to do some mental work. We're going to do that right now. What we want to look at is the beliefs that are causing you to seek the validation of others. One of the main beliefs that you may have that's causing you to seek the validation of others is an idea that other people's opinions are more important than your own. So just take a moment and meditate for yourself. Do you have a belief subconsciously that other people's opinions, what they think, is more important than your own opinion? Because if you have that belief, that's a false belief. So go ahead and write it down if you got it. Other people's opinion is more important than my own, and then put a line through it so your brain can see yourself cross it out. And let's replace it with the more healthy belief. So what is the more healthy, more accurate belief when it comes to other people's opinions? Have you ever heard the adage, opinions are like mouths, everyone has one? That's actually not how it goes. But everyone does have an opinion, right? Everyone's got an opinion, including yourself, perhaps. So if everyone's got an opinion, then whose opinion is actually most important? Other people's opinions or your opinions? What do you think? This is a test for you. Whose opinion is most important? Other humans or your opinions? Whose is the most important opinion? Okay, your time's up. If you said other people's opinions, you were wrong. Their opinions are not more important than yours. If you said my opinion, you're also wrong. Your opinion is not more important than other people's opinions. It was a trick question. Nobody's opinion is more important than another person's opinion. That's like saying whose soul is more important, whose thoughts are more important, whose brain is more important. We're all important. Nobody's opinion is more important than the others. And so what you have to grasp in order to be able to navigate the universe correctly is to recognize yourself as a whole human. You are a human, therefore you are equal in importance to everyone else. Therefore, what you produce, including your thoughts and your opinions, are equal in importance to everyone else. Does that make sense? As a human, you are equal in importance to all other humans on the earth. So write that down as your new updated belief. We learned something here today. All humans are equal in importance. Therefore, all opinions are equal in importance. Nobody's got a more important opinion than the next. So how do we prioritize whose opinion to go with if everyone's opinion is equal in importance? How do we prioritize whose opinion to go with? Think about it for a moment. Do some meditation. How would you decide whose opinion to go with? For instance, let's say you and a few friends were going to buy a very expensive item. You and your friend to your left are not going to be putting in any money. and your friend to the right is going to be putting in all of the money. Now, everyone's got an opinion on what you should buy, and all three of you have a different opinion. Whose opinion should you prioritize? Now, we know everyone's opinion is equal in importance, but whose should we prioritize in this given situation? He's giving $0, you're giving $0, and this guy's putting in all the money. He's putting in 1,200. Do you think you might prioritize, in this case, the opinion of the person who's investing more? Absolutely. So we should prioritize the opinions of those who have the most at stake. We should prioritize the opinions of those who have the most at stake. Their opinion is not literally more important, so we're not looking for their validation. But in this situation, we would ask our friend who's putting in more of his money, we would say, John, what do you want? Let's prioritize what you want, John, because you have the most at stake. You are making the biggest sacrifice. Good. Now let's go back to Rick in the beginning of the story. And now we'll start to see, based on our new beliefs, that our opinion is not less important than others, and that we're supposed to prioritize the opinion of the one who has the most at stake. Now look at Rick's situation. He wants to leave his job. He talks to his mom. Whose opinion should be prioritized in this? Mommy's opinion? Or you, Rick, the one who's going to be potentially losing his source of income? His source of income is at stake. He's got the most at stake. Therefore, his opinion is the one that needs to be prioritized in this case. Does that make sense? Okay, what about with his coworkers? Okay, who's got more at stake if he wants to quit his job? Well, he has the most to lose potentially. His coworkers might gain something if he leaves. So their opinion should not be prioritized because they might actually influence him to do something that's to their advantage and to his disadvantage. So he should not go to them for validation. And guess what? It's the same with his friends, the same with his coworkers, his neighbors, his buddies, his children. These people, their opinions are not the priority. So how does someone who has balanced thinking, like yourself now, that we've overcome these false beliefs, how does someone with balanced thinking handle the issue of validation? Meaning, how do they validate themselves? Where would they get the strength? Well, let's take the example of Brian. Brian's in the same situation as Rick. Brian wants to quit his job. So what does Brian do? Who does Brian call? Brian takes the time to meditate. So instead of going to his mom's house, he goes to the park after work. And he reclines his seat. He closes his eyes and he thinks. And he says to himself, Brian, we have a lot at stake. And so your opinion here is the most important. What do you want? What is important to you? What are the reasons why you would like to leave? And he decides to organize his thoughts by making a list. On one side, he puts the pros or the reasons he wants to leave. On the other side, he puts the cons or the reasons he should stay. And then he weighs out both sides of this list by assigning numbers to each side. And finally, he's able to see very clearly that there's more advantage to staying in his job right now rather than leaving. He does not call his mom and try to manipulate her into seeing his viewpoint. He does not talk to his coworkers and try to get their backing. He doesn't talk to anyone except God. So he says a prayer and he prays for guidance. He takes some time, goes home, sleeps. The next morning, after his gratitude meditation, he begins pondering his decision again. He looks at his notes. Was there anything I missed? I think I have this. Once Brian has decided that he's made his decision, he ponders what the consequences of his decision is going to be. And he braces himself to face those potential consequences. He doesn't try to squirm out of it. He braces himself to face the consequences of his decision. Because if he just freezes and doesn't make a decision, he realizes that inaction is sometimes worse than the wrong action. Inaction is sometimes worse than the wrong action. Because if you don't decide, the universe is going to decide for you. And you may not like how the universe makes things turn out. Does that make sense? And so Brian here is our example of being self-validated. He validated himself. And so he goes into work and he decided he's not going to quit. And then his coworkers, maybe they come up to him and they say, Brian, what do you think, man? Do you think you should quit your job? And Brian says, I've made my decision that I'm going to stay for now. And they may make their points. Brian says, I've already made my decision. Thank you very much. So let's reverse engineer here. How did Brian do this? How did he stand in his own reality? How did he validate himself? Brian meditated. Brian did not consult the advice or counsel of everyone else, thereby manipulating them into supporting what he really wanted to do anyway. He took the time to meditate and to pray on it. If you don't take the time alone, you cannot deepen your spirituality. Instead of viewing being alone as a bad thing, view it as your secret weapon. The ability to be alone, to be in solace, solitude, is the ability to connect to the self and to connect to the divine. We are not just physical beings, after all. Right? We're more than just the flesh. The people around you aren't the ones that are saving you. The people around you are destroying you because they're distracting at best. And some of us have abusers still around us. So the very first thing we need to do if we want to become like Brian is remove all invalidating people from our life. And it doesn't matter what their title is. Mom, dad, cousin, brother, sister. We need to remove their influence to the extent humanly possible from our life. This is the first thing we need to do if we want to learn to validate ourselves, to become gaslight proof. Then we need to practice the skill of meditation. To meditate is to focus the mind and think deeply. Notice Brian didn't go shopping because he had a big decision to make. He didn't watch TV because he had a big decision he needed to avoid. He didn't turn on the radio. He didn't listen to the music. He didn't call his friends. That's all trauma response. Oh my God, I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel. We need to think. We need to think. We need to process the feelings. And so if you're running from the feelings, you can't process the feelings properly. So what about asking for advice? Are you saying it's wrong for us to ask for advice from someone? I hope you're taking notes, because in your notes you need to write, asking for advice comes after we've talked to ourselves. So after meditation, talking to yourself, after prayer, connecting to your creator, seeking higher wisdom, only after that process of you talking to you do you reach out to someone else, because you still need a little bit of assistance. And then in this case, you're going to be very choosy about who you talk to, aren't you? You're not going to talk to your mom and your coworkers and your brother and your friends. Gosh, no, never that. You would seek the counsel of a wise associate, singular. This would be the minimal amount of people that you could possibly involve in the decision. So now you've done the meditation, you've done your work, and now you would reach out to the wisest person that you know who has no skin in this game, who doesn't stand to benefit one way or another. And then perhaps you can get counsel from them. So it helps if we have wise associates. But you know what so many do? They'll do one session with me, maybe two, feel a little bit better, stop talking to me, and go back to talking to their narcissistic boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad. So essentially, they go no contact with me, and then they stay full contact with the person who seeks to destroy them. Your family are the people who are truly looking after your well-being, not the people who are born with the same DNA. It's not the blood that runs through their veins. It's the people who are aligned with your purpose. That's your true family. That's your tribe. So build for yourself a tribe, a council of people that you can trust. And then it becomes easier after you've done your work and your meditation to reach out and to get that feedback, that opinion of another person, to seek counsel. It's not unwise to seek counsel. It's just that we have to do it in a wise way. Someone who's asking for help from everyone, that's not wisdom. That's not wisdom at all. They're just going to confuse themselves. So keep in mind, instead of seeking mediation, seek meditation. When in doubt, instead of seeking mediation to get a third party involved, seek meditation. Meaning we have to learn to talk to ourselves, come to our own decisions, use our tools, like our decision wait list, so that we can weigh out the pros and cons of a decision and make our decisions ourselves. If there's an abuser who's saying something, well, we're not surprised that the things that they're saying are invalidating. That doesn't surprise us. So obviously, we need to separate ourselves from the abuser. We need to separate ourselves from anyone who is invalidating. And we need to learn to stand on our own and face the consequences. Face the consequences of whatever decision we make. We have to unenmesh ourselves. No more they are me, I am them with this boyfriend, this girlfriend. Many women have noted that it's unattractive to them if their husband or their man seeks external validation for their decisions. It's unattractive if their husband or their man seeks external validation. It's a people pleaser. Nothing wrong with a man that looks for other suggestions in a healthy way or takes counsel from those who are wise. But someone who's constantly pandering, looking into the eyes of everyone else, it's unattractive. Cut it out, gentlemen. And this goes the other way as well. Many men have noted that while they first found a woman who comes to them and is asking for their advice to be attractive, they are later dismayed to see that she also is taking advice and counsel from her mother and her sisters and her friends, so that when he makes a decision with her, she doesn't stick with that decision, but she goes and changes her mind because she goes and gets advice from other people. And so she's unsteady. She's switching back and forth. It's unattractive. It's unsustainable. Can't be a good wife if You can't stick to the decisions that you're making as a family if you can't validate your husband. You can't validate your husband properly if you don't know how to validate yourself. And so let's detach from these unhealthy family members and friends. Let's connect with the self, with the divine, and let's validate ourselves so that we can be impervious to gaslighting and mental manipulation.